Hi, I'm Governor John Hickenlooper. You're tuned in to Get More Smarter. I sure hope it works.
Welcome back to another gripping episode of the Get More Smarter show. I'm Jason Bain, joined as always
by Alan Franklin.
This is the week of June 6th. Ballots are dropping. They're going in the mail this week to primary voters.
Obviously, the biggest thing that's going on here in the state of Colorado is the Republican U.S. Senate primary. We've got a 5-person race. There were 3 candidates that were thrown off the ballot by the Secretary of State. They're all still on the ballot. It's a free-for-all, folks.
At least we've got to the ballot.
Yeah, that's right. There was a lawsuit that was filed to try to keep John Kaiser off the ballot. Actually, they couldn't keep him off the ballot. They just wanted to disqualify any votes that might have been cast for him. Sorry, a Denver District Court judge ruled that...
Punted.
Oh, absolutely. It was definitely a punt.
Not so much a ruling.
Ruled that the period of time that John Kaiser's petition signatures could be challenged was up. I think the rule that has been established now in Colorado elections is that if you can keep your fraud under wraps for 5 days, 5 days, folks, then you're in the clear.
Or you just keep suing and filing lawsuits until the judge gives up.
Right, they just get tired. They're like, oh, okay.
Fine, you could be on the ballot.
We're done. Everybody's on the ballot. Republicans are going to have, you've got the winner of the assembly, Darrell Glenn. You've got 2 rich guys, Jack Graham and Robert Blaha. This is like Gilligan's Island, isn't it? We don't have a professor or Mary Ann.
Yeah.
We've also got Ryan Frazier, who, he's our perennial loser. Almost missed the ballot here, was able to sue and get himself back on, ruled as substantially
Ryan Frazier almost found a new way to lose. He almost figured out a way to lose before getting on the ballot.
That would be a new feat. He'll be on the ballot. All 5 of these guys. Now, what the hell do Republican voters do?
To start, you can look at some of the campaign ads that are now finally starting to show up on TV, some with different size buys. We've got them all here for you. We'll show them to you, then we'll talk a little bit about each one. I guess we've got to start with John Kaiser. This ad was absolutely torn apart by PolitiFact as being false. The Denver Post editorial board ripped into John Kaiser. Originally, this was a $5,000 buy, which is like 50 spots for 2 weeks. He's upped it to $100,000. This is the ad that they're spending that money on.
Now Obama wants to give these guys nuclear weapons. And Michael Bennett, he was all for it.
It's a little bit far out there to say that Michael Bennett wants to give the Iranians...
And President Obama.
No, they just all want to give the Iranians a nuclear weapon. That's kind of crazy stuff. That's like, we wanted Osama bin Laden to attack us. Who says that?
You know, I'm sure they have some internal polling that tells them this message works with some section of the Republican voter. But I think it tells you a lot about Kaiser, again, that he's willing to put this blatantly false message on the air and back it up with even more money. I don't know where the money's coming from because his campaign seemed to have been
that's right. I think that what Kaiser is doing is he's operating on the rule that any press coverage for him at this point that doesn't involve the words petition fraud is good coverage. This guy's not going to win. He's probably going to place last, if not close to it, amongst the field of candidates that are there. That's a hard fall for someone who was previously the National Republican Senatorial Committee's hand-picked candidate.
I think we're going to be talking about where John Kaiser's campaign falls historically, frankly, or at least in the last 20 years. I mean, you're talking about Bob Beaupre for governor 2006.
Yeah.
You're talking about Dan Mace, Scott McInnes for governor. And this was an all-time bad campaign. Jack Graham, the former athletic director at Colorado State University, was the first to get an ad up in the spring, I believe, and he recently upped his buy to a total of $700,000, which gets you this commercial on rotation.
I'm a businessman with a track record of getting things done, like building a successful Colorado company that employs hundreds. As your senator, I'll take that can-do attitude to Washington.
Well, there's amazing what you can do with iMovie in about 20 minutes.
That is about as generic and vanilla a campaign ad as you're likely to see in a Republican
I had
primary.
to actually punch myself in the leg just to stay awake.
I just watched the ad again just a few minutes ago, and I can't remember anything in it. It surprises me that you would take this ad and put $700,000 behind it. On the other side, you've got this ad that came out for Ryan Frazier that mentions zombies, and it's just, watch.
They just keep coming at us, devouring our freedoms and tax dollars. The Washington elite The Walking Deadheads. DC is filled with takers. No more.
What the hell did I just watch? No, I had a little Walking Dead in there.
On the one hand, I want to commend him for doing something a little bit different, but for somebody who's had such a tough time in trying to get to elected office in recent years, to be bringing up fictional characters for a kind of fictional campaign.
Definitely an ad that will grab your attention. In terms of conveying a message that makes you want to vote for somebody, it's a little weird.
So they're just throwing up whatever they can that they hope will get their names remembered. I mean, This is a $100,000 buy for Ryan Fraser.
My suggestion, though, if you're going to use zombies in a political ad, shoot them.
Shoot the zombies.
Shoot the zombies.
You heard it
There
here
you
first.
go.
That's right.
I am an unapologetic Christian, constitutional, conservative, pro-life, Second Amendment loving American.
Meet conservative Republican Daryl Glenn.
Now, Senate Conservatives Fund produced that ad, and it's a really great ad.
It's a hell of a tongue twister at the very beginning. I'm a Christian, conservative, constitutionalist.
Right, but you see him lay that out there, though? I mean, that was good. He had cadence.
Daryl Glenn, luckily, has got this third party doing ads for him because he doesn't have any money of his own to put up ads.
That's right. With Graham and Blaha slugging it out, with Frazier kind of out there in weirdo land with the zombies, with Kaiser completely non-factoring after his implosion. I really do see a possibility where Daryl Glenn could sneak this in. And before they got the backing of the Senate Conservatives Fund, he had no money and he was completely it was definitely on course to lose. With their backing now, I do believe the game has changed.
Last but certainly, well, maybe least, we go to Robert Blaha, who really hasn't talked about how much his TV buys are going to be and how much money he's spending on ads, but we've seen some of them, including really the only one that anybody seems to remember, this bobblehead ad.
Yeah.
There's only one cure for today's congressional blahs. Blaha. Robert Blaha is a tenacious fighter, a business leader who knows how to bring change.
Is it just me, or where he's walking down the street in that 1990s leather jacket? It kind of reminds me of Steven Seagal from Above the Law.
That's hilarious. This is in his first go-round. He ran against Doug Lamborn down in the 5th Congressional District, got killed in the primary that year.
But he's spending his own money, and we don't know how much.
Blaha is really taking the hard rhetorical approach to win this primary. If he says the most extreme things on any given issue, that he'll be able to get more name ID.
It's almost like he's trying to out-Trump Trump.
He's trying to out-Trump Trump. Blaha, Trump, and Trump. Wants to go beyond just stopping Muslims from coming into the country.
Big fan of waterboarding, apparently.
Oh, yes.
Robert
Waterboarding is not torture.
You see there they show a bobblehead a couple times at the beginning. I think it's supposed to be Bennett, but it looks a lot like former Governor Bill Owens.
Bill Owens, yeah. I don't know that they've had a chance to make a bobblehead for Bennett yet, but I remember there being some Owens ones left over.
We've got to talk about the Delta County Republican Party. The Republican Party chair there is facing a lot of calls to resign.
Really? So that's the first one that really got folks' attention. As you can see, it's a photo of President Ronald Reagan nursing a chimpanzee. And it says, oh, well, he used to babysit Obama.
She originally, when contacted by a reporter, said that she did post this. And she did this. This was a joke, and if you didn't like the joke or you didn't think it was funny,
she says, I don't care who's offended by it. I mean, she was absolutely. And then
a couple of hours later,
it got weird. The vice chairman of the Delta County Republic was like, oh, no, what are you talking about? This got hacked.
Must be the same.
Clearly, those Democrats
or the same unknown person who sent the Never Trump tweet from the Colorado Republican Party.
Oh, I'm thinking it's the same gremlin.
That they're suing.
Very bad excuse making. The Delta County Republican Party chairwoman Linda Sorensen is admitting that her Facebook was never hacked.
This isn't going to cause have a big cause or effect on the election one way or the other, but it's stupid. It really hurts the Republican cause, the Republican brand to whatever extent it still even exists. Yeah. People may not know where Delta County is, but they understand the rest of that story. Representative Scott Tipton, running for re-election in CD3 out there on the West Slope, southern Colorado, he's now being asked to kind of comment on this, and he doesn't want anything to do with this.
Well, of course. I mean, this is just like Trump. This is where these things go up the line. When you're a member of this party, inevitably, these people all speak for one another as members of the party. And if you don't like what someone in a party leadership position is saying, by God, you've got an obligation to say so.
Ben Higgins, apparently he was a fairly popular contestant, I don't even know if that's the right word to use, on the ABC show The Bachelor. Some Republican consultants are trying to convince him to run against incumbent Democrat Dan Pabon.
Don't ask me, honestly. The registration difference in this district between Democrats and Republicans makes this a fool's errand. Everything that he stands for as a conservative, religious Republican is anathema to what the voters in House District 4 want. This is somebody's bad idea of a focus group ploy, and it's just, it's gonna fail. The poor guy's probably got some kind of better shot in life down the road, but this is not the time to do it.
Let me give you some numbers real quickly here, and you can see them up on the screen behind us. 22,000 roughly active Democrats, active registered Democrats in the district. A little less than 5,000 Republicans, so we're talking about more than 5 to 1.
Yeah.
And about 14,000 active unaffiliated voters. Ben Higgins could get all of the active unaffiliated voters and all of the active Republican voters, and he'd still lose.
In this election season, with Donald Trump at the top of the ticket, you got to ask yourself if another reality TV star isn't just committing a disastrous mistake.
Right.
What are we, the Trump-Higgins reality TV ticket? No, that's not going to go
I think
well.
Higgins is considerably less wealthy than Trump, which probably doesn't help.
Right. Last couple of weeks.
And finally, over the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of conversations, a lot of media questions. Colorado Governor John Hickenlooper, would he be a potential vice presidential choice for Hillary Clinton? What's the possibility that this really happens,
Well,
do you think?
let's kind of piece this out here. You've got Governor Hickenlooper. He's a fairly popular, Western, centrist Democrat. There's a lot of assets there that might work well in a general election. With that said, there's some things about Hillary's own needs for a running mate that might actually steer her to a different choice. What does Hillary Clinton need most on her ticket in order to make sure she prevails in the general election?
Or put another way, what does she need least?
Right.
A middle-aged white dude.
Hillary herself is, she is left of center, but she's by no means a progressive activist. She's much more in the middle of the road mold that I would say that Hickenlooper is.
Look, he'd be a good vice presidential candidate. I don't know that it makes sense in terms of the other potential candidates bet that John Hickenlooper will become a cabinet secretary of some sort.
Oh, that seems quite likely.
And,
yeah. If he wasn't selected for the vice presidential nomination, I could see him being Secretary of Commerce.
Right.
It's nice to see that Colorado is no longer flyover country. I mean, obviously, our politicians are first tier in both parties.
Well, sort of. It's interview time here on the Get More Smarter show, and we are very pleased to be joined in just a moment by Ian Silverii, the new Executive Director of ProgressNow Colorado, formerly the Chief of Staff to House Speaker Dickie Lee Hollinghorst. So he's got a wealth of knowledge about the way the House works and the way the legislature works in general, but we'll talk to him also about some of the primaries that you really want to keep an eye on in a couple of weeks here. Welcome back to Get More Smarter. I'm joined here with Ian Silverii, the new Executive Director of ProgressNow Colorado, formerly with the state of Colorado under House Speaker Dickie Lee Hollinghorst. I've been practicing that, Hollinghorst. So in your role as Chief of Staff to House Speaker Hollinghorst, you probably know more than anybody about the various House races that are really on everybody's radar coming up at the end of this month.
Top of mind is House District 8, which is right here in Denver. It's Aaron Goldhammer and Leslie Herod fighting it out. Two strong, young, progressive individuals. Either one, I think, would make an excellent state representative and a big addition to the caucus. By performance, House District 8 is actually the #1 Democratic seat in the entire House.
So House District 10 in Boulder, another case where Democratic primary probably going to decide the general election. Is this a close race too?
Yeah, all indications point to it's a close race. I understand that Angelique Espinoza has aligned herself with sort of the Bernie Sanders crowd, and I think Edie is with the Hillary folks. Don't quote me on that. That's just kind of what I've heard.
Sure.
whispers
that may play a
was.
role.
It very well could, and I think it's sort of anybody's race at this point. And again, this is another embarrassment of riches for the blue team.
Well, give me one more House race on the Democratic side before we switch to Republicans, where you've really got to, you think people really need to watch or should keep an eye on.
House District 3, which is not only probably the most competitive Democratic primary in the state, but also going to be one of the most competitive general election districts in the state as well.
South Denver-ish, right?
Yeah, it's Greenwood Village, Cherry Hills Village, and Englewood specifically. That district has been competitive since the district was redrawn after the 2010 census. The primary actually on both sides, there's a Republican primary and a Democratic primary. The Democratic primary features two very, very qualified candidates. On the one hand, you have Meg Froelich, who is a former Greenwood Village city council person. She's been in the community for a long time, raised her family there, is a well-known pro-choice activist. People could recognize her recently from her documentary film about women in Colorado politics, Strong Sisters, which is a terrific movie, actually. It's quite well done. The other candidate is a guy named Jeff Bridges, who was born and raised in the district, left for a while, went to Harvard, and then moved back recently, bought a home in the district, and is running for House District 3 as well. Jeff is sort of best known through some of his familial connections to Colorado. His dad, Rep Bridges, was involved in progressive politics here for quite a while. This is another situation where they both went through caucus. Meg got top line. I think it was about 60-40, and you need 30% or more to be on the ballot through caucus in Colorado. So this is definitely an interesting race.
All right, now speaking of House District 3 in South Denver, you talked about the Democratic primary. There's also a Republican primary.
So the first person to file was a man named Rick Gillett. I think he's on Greenwood Village City Council as well. He's sort of styling himself as the, traditional conservative, sort of rock-ribbed right-winger from Colorado. Anti-whatever Obama's for that day, I suppose.
Right.
He and Katie Brown, who's his opponent, both went through caucus and both made the ballot. She almost knocked him out, but he got a little bit over 30%, so that means he got to go on the ballot without having to petition on.
It would be a surprise if Brown doesn't win, right?
Well, she's got a huge resource advantage. It's very clear that she's a recruit. Her website's super professional. It doesn't really say anything about any positions or any issues. Someone who looks pretty good on paper, not a lot of information about her positions out there in the world, so it'd be interesting to know what she stands for or stands against. And yeah,
and the general,
it's gotta be a dog fight, and the person who raises the most money, who works the hardest, who knocks the most doors, and who can stay above the negativity is going to be the one that wins that thing. And depending on how this national environment goes, it's a tough district. It's a competitive district, always has been, and it probably always will be.
A couple more Republican primaries that I'm sure have no relevance to the general election, right?
Yeah, that's true. There's two districts I'm thinking about in El Paso County that come to mind immediately. House District 21, which is currently represented by Representative Lois Landgraf out of Fountain. And she's got a primary opponent, although she's the incumbent. She actually got elected for the first time in 2012 and then re-elected in 2014. And now she's got, strangely, this primary that's sort of coming out of nowhere. Representative Landgraf is seen as one of sort of the more moderate members of the Republican caucus in the House. She's conservative in a lot of ways, don't get me wrong, but she's come over the fence on some interesting issues. The one I'm thinking about most readily is the issue around allowing transgender individuals to change the gender designation on their birth certificate without having to go through surgery or go through all these hoops that current law.
So this may be a case where where we have to see, will voters punish her for that? Conservative voters?
A single issue like that can draw somebody in to try and defeat a public servant who, for all intents and purposes, is doing a good job for her district, all things considered. Representative Janak Joshi, who's the current incumbent, got elected in 2010, re-elected in 12 and 14, and is running for his final term right now, getting primaried by Larry Liston, who was the representative for that seat up until he was termed out in 2010. So it's kind of strange when you consider the fact that Representative Joshi really only has 2 more years left. Former Representative Liston could easily wait those 2 years and then run for his seat again, but apparently he's just gotten quite bored. He was the sort of loudest, strongest, earliest supporter of Donald Trump in the state of Colorado, sort of the first former or current elected official that came out and said, you know what, he's my guy, and I guess he predicted something that a lot of us missed. So Representative Joshi, I don't see how you get more conservative than that guy, quite frankly. It's getting down to the dirt, and they're throwing the mud around down there, and, whoever wins the primary is probably going to win the general down there.
So let me ask you about another potential candidate. I'm sure you're a big fan of The Bachelor. You don't watch it all.
Never seen an episode of my life.
I don't either. But Ben Higgins, the Denver Republican, who supposedly, is a pretty popular, contestant on The Bachelor.
I suppose, yeah.
May be looking to run in House District 4 in Denver. What do you think of that?
I think this is when The Bachelor becomes the biggest loser. There's some consultant is taking this guy for a ride.
Right.
I mean, that's what's going on, right? Somebody's making money, somebody's getting attention, and it's because he found himself a celebrity who's silly enough to think that a Republican can win in Northwest Denver.
The numbers are just you can't overcome this.
There's like a 5-to-1 registration advantage or something. I mean, it's impossible. And if this guy thinks that being on The Bachelor makes you qualified to run for office, let alone gives you enough name ID to beat a sitting incumbent who's the Speaker Pro Tem of the caucus, I think is like someone selling him something, right? And that person's probably doing great. And all I know about the guy is that he got stuck in an elevator and he's got like a incorrectly cited Bible verse somewhere tattooed on his body. And that's pretty much all I know about
two more things than I do.
Yeah, it was in the Statesman.
Democrats have a 3-seat majority
in the House.
In the House. When all is said and done in November, where do you think that stands? Do they keep the majority? Do they expand it? Does it stay close? What do you think?
In 2010, the Democrats lost the majority by 1 seat in an election that was decided by 170 votes. That was razor thin. In 2012, they picked it up, got 37 Democrats out of 65, big majority. And then in 2014, there was a bloodbath, but the House of Representatives hung on, like you said, by a 3-seat majority. So
and this is not a good year for Republicans in general. It doesn't look like it anyway. And Democrats have been consistently winning races in Colorado despite being in the minority of registered voters over the last decade, 15 years.
That's right. And it's a lot to do with the candidate recruitment. It's a lot to do with the strategies and tactics. A lot of Republican candidates are not vetted, and they're just not ready for prime time when they show up. So I'm pretty confident that the House Dems will keep the majority, and I'm fairly sure they're going to actually pick up some more seats, get back up to that 37, 38 seat threshold. In this environment, if it all collapses around Donald Trump, which is totally likely, they could get up to 40 seats, no doubt.
Ian Silverii with Progress Now Colorado, thanks so much for joining us here on the Get More Smarter show. Hope you all got a little bit more smarter in listening to him. We'll be back in a minute.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks, everybody.
That about does it for this week's episode of the Get More Smarter show. We'll see you next week.